Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome to SIMBA Chain's webinar, presented in concert with the Chronicle of Higher Education. Blockchain has been in the news a lot lately due to the skyrocketing price of cryptocurrencies and an explosion of non-fungible tokens, or NFTs. While all of these digital assets are based on an underlying blockchain technology, they are far from its only application. Blockchain technology has the potential to transform many sectors and disciplines, including the social sciences. Of particular interest to those of us in higher education is the impact on research. Given these trends, how can the higher education community prepare students and researchers for this brave new world? Today, we'll be covering blockchain and the social sciences as we discuss the theoretical frameworks of two concepts used by SIMBA Chain and its collaborative partners within academia, situated cognition theory and its use within knowledge-based communities. I am Dr. Lisa Smith, Director of DeFi Compliance and Education at SIMBA Chain, and will be joined today by my colleague, Alex Hammel, Senior Product Manager at SIMBA Chain, and Dr. Joan Nix, Associate Professor of Economics at Queens College. We'd like you to contribute today as well during our time together. Now and throughout the webinar, you'll be able to use the Zoom Q&A function to ask questions, which we'll get to at the end of the webinar. We'll try to answer as many of your questions as possible. We'll also be sharing a recording of this webinar with you all tomorrow, including a link to the slides that we shared today. So let's get started. Today, we will start with a high-level introduction of blockchain as a part of the fourth industrial revolution and the features that attribute to its role in innovation. And since this is such a varied audience in terms of knowledge of blockchain, we will do a brief introduction to the basic concepts of blockchain. We will then discuss the theoretical framework associated with the initiative between academia and practitioners to achieve widespread adoption of blockchain using situated cognition theory and knowledge community as a means of integration into blockchain studies. Finally, we will end the presentation with academic use cases for SIMBA's development of smart contracts covered by my colleague Alex, and how it has been used within academia as a part of a community of practice model by one of our partners, Dr. Joan Nix at Queens College. For some, the concept of blockchain as an innovation is deemed to be a concept that emerged seemingly out of nowhere. And when we think of the blockchain, it brings to mind the evolution of prior industrial revolutions over time and the role that blockchain will play in innovation. Beginning with the first industrial revolution, which was steam engineering in the late 1700s, which later led to the second industrial revolution, which included the use of the assembly line and manufacturing beginning in the 1830s to the early 1900s. Up until this point, innovation was more about building efficiencies in transportation, energy, and physical assets to enhance economies of scale in production environments. Then in the late 1960s into the early 2010s, an era most of us recognize, was the computing, internet, nuclear energy revolution. This time period emerged with the birth of large mainframe databases, the personal computer, and as well as the rise of the internet as we know it today. Unlike the other revolutions, this third industrial revolution embarked more on the importance of how data is maintained and stored in secure environments. This is also how the digitalization of tracking supply chains, as well as financial data, became more eminent. So the industrial revolution, the fourth, is characterized by the digitalization of value chains, which includes ongoing automation using modern smart technology where large-scale machine-to-machine communication and the Internet of Things are integrated. With this comes improved communication and self-monitoring, where we analyze and diagnose issues without much need for human intervention. This concept is most characterized as AI, or artificial intelligence. So to explain the basis of blockchain, we refer to a simplified Google Docs analogy, which many of you may have already seen on our previous webinars. We imagine a Google spreadsheet that we all have access to, usually within Google Docs, where we can only append or add additional lines through one application. We all own co-equal copies, which represents decentralization, and we automatically stay in sync through synchronization, or which is referred to within a blockchain as consensus algorithms. Our network predetermines what information is shared, which adds the element of transparency. Our network predetermines what information is private, which includes the security element. Our co-equal copies can also include executable code, so digital workflows are guaranteed to execute automatically, which is essentially the definition of a smart contract. So to explain to most of you, another analogy that may be similar to this is many of us are still using the Microsoft Word documents, where there's one centralized owner of the document at one time who has the rights to edit and update the document privately until it's shared by that owner. Without synchronization, there could be multiple owners of similar versions of the same document without any declaration of which copy represents the master copy. In contrast with the blockchain, everything is synchronized in real time where everyone can see all changes as they are made. And this is very similar to how Google Docs works, as well as third-party payers with in the financial services using PayPal, Zelle, and Cash App, which are all peer-to-peer networks. So the acronym DLT refers to a distributed ledger technology. Distributed reflects a distributed rather than a centralized nature. The ledger represents a database of records, and technology defines the protocol to synchronize this distributed data without a central authority to regulate this. This is a visible representation of a centralized versus a distributed ledger. A blockchain refers to an opinionated DLT with very specific ways of organizing data divided into blocks that are linked together in a peer-to-peer network. In a centralized structure on the left, there's usually one entity managing this information, whereas in a blockchain, everyone in the network gets a copy of the entire database. The old blocks are preserved forever, while new blocks are irreversibly added, making it impossible to manipulate by faking data or transactions. In the centralized ledger, the centralized entity holds more or less the golden record, and all reconciliations are reconciled with the centralized unit, with the burden of proof falling on clients A through D to provide proof of the true state when discrepancies arise. Whereas in the distributed ledger, one ledger and all nodes or computers have some level of access to that ledger. In this structure, all nodes must agree to a protocol to determine the true state of the ledger at any point in time, that is, achieving consensus. So when we think of academic theory, situated cognition theory is a theory of instruction that suggests learning is naturally tied to authentic activity, context, and culture. According to Wenger, there are 4 tenets of situated cognition theory. The humans are social beings, where we learn and adapt based on social interactions of others, where knowledge is best achieved in a value enterprise, such as learning a new foreign language or coding. Knowing must include some form of participation in a given enterprise, which enhances adaptation to that environment. And we experience this in the form of internships, residencies, and apprenticeships. The context of meaning, which emphasizes experience and engagements within the new world, are best achieved by including that participant in that environment, such as going to college and assuming the lifestyle of a college student, or joining a new religion and embracing its traditions. This concept is most effective in the design and development of classroom instruction, teacher education, both in service and pre-service, and the electronic or technology-based learning. This theoretical approach for learning is becoming much more relevant, really mainly due to the abstract nature of blockchain itself, the newness of the topic, in terms of the lack of wide-scale documented use cases, which has presented a barrier for those of us in higher education beyond the traditional IT and data analytics disciplines. And our goal today is to discuss this approach as more of you consider how to best bring blockchain studies into your respective institutions. Situated cognition theory is based on the concept that understanding how knowledge and skills can be applied is as important as learning the knowledge and skills itself. The theory recognizes that the context, both physical and social elements of learning activity, are critical to the learning process, and it emphasizes that when learning is grounded within a situated context, learning is authentic and relevant and therefore representative of an experience found in STEM learning. As previously mentioned in the first tenet, social interaction is a critical component of situated learning, which is usually unintended versus deliberate, and cognitive apprenticeship is an important aspect where the interaction between the expert and the novice creates the foundation for learning. So we ask, why is this important? This theoretical approach for learning is becoming much more relevant, as I mentioned before, mainly due to the abstract nature of learning blockchain itself. So what we hope to do is have this applied learning used in a context for technology-based applications as we move forward with innovation. The theoretical framework for applying situated cognition theory and STEM-based models consists of 4 different elements: engineering design, scientific inquiry, technological literacy, and mathematical thinking. The rope and pulley demonstrates how these disciplines, when combined, create a well-rounded situated STEM learning framework, where the rope in this model combines and pulls these elements together in what's known as the community of practice, which we will discuss further in a few moments. There are 3 elements to this framework, where there is interaction between people within a community, considering history, culture, patterns of relationships, activity, where there's a high fidelity information, and thirdly, ingredients, which refers to technology, languages, images, and knowledge. The main principles are that thinking and learning only makes sense within a particular situation, that people act and construct meaning within community of practice. Thirdly, that knowledge depends on the use of a variety of artifacts and tools, and that situations make sense within a historical context. So this illustration highlights the cross-functional relationship between tacit and explicit learning, where the informal communities learn by interactions within the social environment using externalization, whereas explicit learning evolves more from formal organizational structure coupled with the diffusion, application, and value realization. This creates the knowledge spiral we see illustrated with the middle line that is powered by communities. This illustration highlights the transfer of knowledge from a learning community, which is similar to the pulley approach we mentioned earlier, and the community of practice model. The important takeaway here is that the interaction between the novice and the expert is what creates the community of practice and the transfer between the learner and the community. So according to Winger, in the publication of Blackmore in 2010, communities of practice is a multi-purpose concept. As a social learning theory, community of practice considers learning in a social context requiring both participation and reification, making something concrete in order to make learning more meaningful. The interplay of participation and reification creates a social history of learning, and it is this history that gives community of practice an informal and dynamic social structure. The 3 central structures of community of practice are the domain, which represents an area of shared interest, the community, which is a shared body of knowledge, experience, and techniques, and practice, a self-selected group of individuals who care about the topic to participate in regular interactions. The shared body of knowledge, experiences, and techniques are the integration of the classroom environment, coupled with situated context of adding blockchain studies using use cases presented in a classroom environment to solve real-world problems. We accomplish this using tools such as SIMBA Chain Smart Contract Designer, a quick start to just demonstrate how these issues can be designed and deployed into the blockchain. Over the course of the last couple of years, the pandemic presented a number of limitations that required individuals in academia, as well as within the corporate sector, to work together in order to formulate innovative techniques to bring the knowledge of blockchain into the academic environment. In previous webinars on this topic, we have covered how those partnerships have worked together to create this knowledge-based concept. And one example of knowledge-based communities used in blockchain implementation outside of academia is the consortia concept, which have become a popular means for enterprises to work together on blockchain technology. More than 40 blockchain consortia have formally formed globally, some of which have attracted significant investments, mostly from industry players within the financial services. Some examples of concepts that have emerged from consortia are a digital trade chain, which is used to facilitate cross-border trade for small and medium-sized businesses, and Hyperledger, an open source, advanced cross-industry blockchain technology. Both were formed within the context of consortia used in the implementation of blockchain adoption. The main point here is that within this consortium framework, we are also seeing with it the emergence of knowledge-based communities that are formulated between academia and the corporate sector. Within that context, there is a common goal of achieving widespread adoption of blockchain deployment that effectively manages funding, membership, leadership, and governance of all members of the community. As a result, it becomes even more important to ensure that our students are adequately prepared. For the purposes of this webinar, SIMBA Chain and the members of academia have shared a shared interest, which is to maximize this widespread adoption. This represents the domain of the community practice model, as I mentioned earlier. This slide shows that the SIMBA Quick Start program enables academia to introduce the blockchain and smart contract concept without the need to learn coding or programming language. For those of you who may be familiar, and this is going more on the research side of things, with structured equation modeling using smart PLS, where research data is integrated into more or less a drag and drop concept, illustrating the relationship between independent and dependent the variables on a canvas. This smart contract designer provides a very similar concept in a canvas structure that enables us to visualize workflows and help design very specific parameters that are relevant for a smart contract. For example, this slide shows what a smart contract looks like using the drop and drag interface. The relationship between assets and transactions is created on the canvas on the left, while the corresponding coding is simultaneously created behind the scenes. Thank you for your time today. Next, I will turn it over to my colleague, Alex Hammel, who will help transition us out of this theoretical realm of the social sciences into more of the real life applications for blockchain use cases.
All right, so I'm going to talk today about the use cases that SIMBA Chain has actually collaborated with people on. So blockchain can be a complex topic. And so in order to better understand that, I want to make sure that we understand how we can actually solve some real world problems. You're going to see that you've probably heard about cryptocurrency, but cryptocurrency is just one application of blockchain. You can see here in this diagram, there are many possibilities for what blockchain can be used for. And those span from banking and financial to medical records. I mean, the breadth of this is really actually quite amazing. People just really don't realize how many different potential uses there are for blockchain because they're only hearing about kind of a very narrow subset of what blockchain can do. And so today, what I want to really focus on is looking at some of the things that SIMBA has done with partners in order to actually build some blockchain applications. The first one that was an amazing project was the Taupe Sustainable Coffee Project. So the Tokes company is basically a large restaurant chain in Mexico. And they are looking to really improve sustainable practices and working with small coffee cooperatives throughout the country. And so the idea of this whole thing was they wanted to be able to track and see where their coffee beans are coming from. Now, the interesting thing about this is that, the coffee supply chain is kind of a complicated supply chain. So you can see here that it doesn't just go, from farmer to restaurant. There's all these intermediaries that go there. So you've got, cooperatives, shellers, roasters, all these, different aspects of this supply chain that need to be tracked. And so what we worked with Tokes on was actually creating a blockchain application so they could verify where all of these different where everything was in the pipeline. So an interesting use of blockchain here is again using this kind of a live tracking benefit. So for the first time, the Tokes restaurant system could actually verify exactly where all the coffee beans came from. It can eliminate counterfeiting. And really just ensure that you're also getting, the product that you are expecting. So again, just one application that we worked on there where we call this kind of track and trace, where we allow or where we can follow more easily how something goes from the very start of it all the way to a finished product, and we can use blockchain to verify that all the way along. Another really great use case for blockchain was a collaboration that we did with Flinders University. And this was a product that we call Media Verify. And so the real goal behind this was, to authenticate official media public releases. So, right now we have, a lot of issues with disinformation, with misinformation. I mean, there's a lot of that, happening right now, and it's a huge problem. And so even trying to trace back, what's true, what was originally said, this can be a challenge that we're still dealing with, and trying to find solutions for. And so this is one way that, blockchain could help. So ultimately, what the goal of this is you can actually who's ever sharing the information. So let's say a government entity in this case would want to share a document. This could be a document, it could be an image, it could be a video, it could be any sort of media. But they would store this media on blockchain. And then that media we can create kind of a fingerprint on that. And so with that fingerprint, we're using what they call a syntactic hash, which allows us to take that fingerprint and know exactly what this document looked like, bit by bit. So every single bit of that document can be compared against. So you can imagine if somebody was having, say, a press release and they wanted to make sure that nothing was edited, nothing was changed, on that, they could put this on chain. And then you could actually, if any documents come out that are shared after that, you would actually be able to go back and check and make sure, is that looking exactly like what the original document had? And it'll give us a range on this. So you can say, 0 is not a match at all, whereas 100 is an exact match. And so this is really useful in determining if there's been any, changes made to a document. And this is what's great about that is that, we're solving some of these problems that are very difficult right now because, it's hard to even get back to, what the original, truth or what the original, story was. This gives us a way where we can actually help resolve that. And this is just really an example of kind of looking at, what the app can do. So you can see you've got, 2 pictures here. One at the top was the original picture, and the one below has been, modified. And so you'd be able to use this application. So you could, again, verify the original image against that other image and see if there were any changes from the original. Another great use that SIMBA has been working on is badges and certifications. We've seen a really huge explosion in the amount of, whether that's a badge or, achievements or, certifications, any of these things are becoming very, very popular. And currently right now, what you're seeing with a lot of these, badges and certifications is there's really, so, I mean, you may be able to check on some of those, but some platforms don't even really have the ability for you to go and verify that yourself. So if somebody puts a badge, on their resume or lists that, or, says that they've, got a badge, some of those are kind of difficult to track down because there aren't necessarily databases that you can actually check upon. And that's where SIMBA has, created a solution here as well for these types of certifications. So, imagine you're, an academic institution and you want to have, some kind of verification, and you don't even want to manage that process, right? You just want to know that, absolutely, that somebody has what they say they have. And this is just another, type of application that blockchain is very useful for, and is a lot of potential. Another one that you may have heard about, it's been very, very popular in the news lately, is the NFT marketplace. That's the non-fungible tokens. And so what you're seeing with the NFT marketplace, there's been some record-setting, prices. There was recently an NFT that just sold for $69 million. So these markets are these kind of emerging markets, all around NFTs. And these NFTs really can be anything, anything digital. So, these could be drawings, music, images, virtual avatars. So any of these they're really digital assets. And these NFTs are essentially just unique digital assets that you can, again, that are on blockchains. You can verify, who owns them, how many of them there are, and so on. And so another thing that SIMBA has been working on is creating marketplaces for this. So what's interesting about this is a lot of brands want to have, maybe more control over their own type of marketplace. So they don't want to necessarily be putting their NFTs onto, a more public general marketplace. They want to control that. So they want to have their branding. They want to have, they want to be able to control every aspect of that marketplace. And SIMBA has been working to, work with universities, sports teams, and many other institutions as well to help create those marketplaces. So that gives you at least just an overview, I would say, of just some of the places that you can actually see blockchain being utilized, and specifically blockchain being utilized with SIMBA. We've worked with many university partners in a lot of different aspects that are more far-reaching than even what we've covered here. But we just wanted to give at least an overview of what's possible with SIMBA. What's also great about the platform that we have is that it allows you to have this really easy drag and drop interface, and it also works with a lot of different blockchains. There's Ethereum, Quorum, Stellar. There's all these different blockchain technologies, and what SIMBA allows us to do there is more easily work across all those different blockchains. And probably just looking at ways that we implement this with our university partners is we can do this in a lot of different ways. This can vary all the way from having say just an individual one lesson, right? So some schools, depending on what they're doing, might want to have just an individual lesson within a course. They also might go and want to have an entire, blockchain program that they're developing. And so SIMBA has been working, with our university partners, to help guide and create those solutions for whatever they want to do. So it doesn't have to be, you don't necessarily have to be something where it's going to be, an entire, new course or series of courses. This can just be, like a single lesson that's embedded within a class. We can also do, seminars, workshops. We do a lot of that type of work. So, if blockchain has been something that, you were trying to figure out, at the university, or ways that you might want to, utilize blockchain technology at that university level, it's something that, SIMBA is really happy to help with. And next, I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Joan Nix. And she's going to share her experience using the community of practice model at Queens College.
Thank you. So thank you very much, Alex. Thank you, Lisa. Very interesting. I want to give a very brief background how I came to know about SIMBA Chain and decided to use it in my class. I taught a course 2 years ago on the economics of crypto assets, and I did not use SIMBA Chain. The students did not have any chance to really gain experience with the blockchain. And the second time I taught it last spring, I actually attended a webinar just like this. I learned about SIMBA Chain and reached out to them. And since it was the beginning, the semester had already started, what I did was assign an extra credit project to my class. And they couldn't lose points, but they could gain points. And we also had tutorials with SIMBA Chain. We had a lot of discussions. I felt that we really became, even in an online environment, a community of learners about blockchain. And what I then did for today is I reached out to one of the students from that class who happens to be an accounting major at our college, Queens College. And I asked him, well, could you just put together a few slides about your experience with SIMBA Chain in the class? And he was so excited. He also formed a blockchain club after working with SIMBA Chain with his classmates. So we now have a blockchain club, a student club. It's really a grassroots effort on the part of the students here at Queens College. So what I think he points to, which is really important and mattered a lot for me, is that it works without any experience with Solidity. So you don't have to know the programming language that's used in Ethereum. You don't have to know any programming, any coding. You don't have to have any knowledge of smart contracts. You don't have to have any experience with software wallets. You have, as he said, very little understanding of coding. And the one thing you need is a desire to learn. And the takeaways from the SIMBA Chain project is that you don't have to be a coder to build out your idea for a smart contract. I also want to add that I asked each student who was participating in the project to plan their project on paper first and to show me a paper copy of what they wanted to do, then put it into the SIMBA Chain and talk about what they learned by doing it that way. And I thought that was a very good exercise. What the students really liked about it was the smart contracts can be deployed across many different networks, and most of them use the test net, and that they required a payment for every action. And so they really got to understand wallets as opposed to reading about wallets and talking about wallets. Here, they really got to understand the importance of wallets for getting the transactions completed. And they also, and I said this led to this grassroots movement to get the blockchain club on campus, is that if we're going to have widespread adoption, if that's going to become a reality, we have to have the education institutions step in, and we also have to have user-friendly tools. So SIMBA Chain was viewed similar to WordPress and Wix in terms of creating a website without having to really get too much under the hood. You could do that with WordPress and Wix, and you can also get very far in terms of designing a smart contract. So here's an example of his project. It was to verify vaccines and using the blockchain. And what he really liked was the fact that you could actually see, it was auto-created, but you could see the programming. So for those students who wanted to go into a deeper dive in terms of the actual programming, they could see it, learn from it. And some of them have gone on to take courses in coding and say, well, I want to go even farther into this. So the drag and click is great. The use of the wallet is great. Being able to see their smart contract on the blockchain is also really important for them. And after the class was over, as I said, from what I've seen in the blockchain club, they developed an interest in understanding the technical aspects of smart contracts. Then learning the language, Solidity, after tinkering with the code, made it much easier for them. And the use cases help to give context to the purpose of smart contracts in many industries. So as opposed to a trading perspective, actually, getting a chance to design their own smart contract was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it, the students enjoyed it, and they shared ideas with each other and with me. And I also was very hands-off in that there was very little direction on my part. SIMBA Chain stepped in with the webinars that we attended as a class. With any kind of question that we had, they were available, and the students really took it from there. So I highly recommend it, and I thought it was overall a very, very positive experience. So thank you. I also want to mention we have a question and answer, so please feel free to add your questions. Thank you. Okay, I'll hand it back to Lisa.
Thank you, Dr. Nix.
Yes.
Appreciate your contribution, and it's been great working with you as a partner in
Thank
bringing blockchain studies more into the academic environment. We're now in the Q&A portion of our program. So as a reminder, you can use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen within, my video going here. At the bottom of your screen to ensure that we receive your question before the end of the program. I think the first question asked about how do projects with SIMBA partners mitigate the risk of becoming too centralized within a single organization? Was that not typically seen as a threat? I guess to answer that question, Jake, we are not necessarily, when we bring in projects into SIMBA, we don't necessarily take ownership of them per se. There, of course, are non-disclosure agreements that are signed as well, but our goal is to assist our clients with providing solutions for smart contracting. And then they take ownership of that project and move forward with getting it implemented. So I would say it's not really a threat, as you mentioned, as a possibility in your question. The second question, and I don't know, Alex, it may be a better one for you with the NFT market.
Yeah, the second question here was, is being beyond being able to purchase NFTs, can the owner of an NFT license and create a sort of income stream from that content? So with NFTs, it's really actually, it's very similar. Like you're actually kind of defining how those NFTs can be used. So, you can think about NFTs, even almost, I think one way to think about it is almost like, could be like artwork. So, you can buy a painting, but you can't necessarily use that painting, to, sell or resell, images of that painting, for your own, profit. So that's one way. So depending on, but again, that's how the NFT is set up. So, there could be a scenario where, you're purchasing an NFT and you do own that NFT, but can't necessarily use that for profiting on. However, depending on how that NFT is structured and created, let's say you were creating an NFT and you wanted, to allow that license to be utilized so that other people would use that, they could use that image, they could, make creations, from that. You could, define the terms like that so they could do that as well. So it really does kind of depend on how that's set up. But there is the potential of, creating NFTs in a way that those could be licensed under whatever terms you want to set to create, whether that's, profits or uses, for that. Essentially, you're defining that when you're creating those NFTs and the smart contracts.
Okay, and Dr. Nix, I see a couple of questions for you regarding how you were able to implement blockchain studies into your classroom.
Yes, I saw that question, my background. So the course is called, okay, do you want my video? Okay. The course is called The Economics of Crypto Assets. It's open to finance majors. It's open to accounting majors. It's open to computer science majors. It's open to econ majors. And I had a very broad group in terms of different majors in the class. It is part of our new fintech concentration. So it's a required course in the soon to be official fintech concentration. And my own background, I have my PhD in economics from NYU, where my fields were game theory and finance. And I feel both helped me a lot in understanding the economics of crypto, but nothing can compare to gaining the actual experience of working on a blockchain that SIMBA Chain provides. So, okay.
Very good. Thank you, Dr. Nix.
Sure.
How can we start discussions with SIMBA to include training webinars for students in our classes? You can certainly just follow up with us following this webinar, and we will set up an initial consultation with you, learn more about your programs, your school of learning, and we will follow up with a customized presentation on how we can best adapt your current curriculum to blockchain studies. If it's a scenario in which you have professors who are interested in learning more about the basics of blockchain, we can also do trainer seminars as well to incorporate that training to the faculty members and then implement additional consultations from there. So feel free to reach out, and we do have your contact information as well. What else do we have? How much success, Jamie, thanks for your question. How much success have you had getting this technology in front of institutions in the US? And how do you manage skepticism? Up until this point, we have experienced more of a proactive approach by institutions who are professors in certain disciplines within business schools primarily that have a need or more of a specific need to address. And they've been reaching out to us. And I believe that's initially how the academic partnerships began. And then over time, as we continue to speak with more and more institutions, we have started reaching out to certain schools or disciplines within the business school to introduce our concept. And usually because of the use cases, for instance, that have been recently announced for accounting and auditing, where the blockchain studies will be covered as a part of the CPA exams over the next couple of years, there is a significant interest in getting the basics of blockchains addressed within academic institutions to enable those students to be well prepared for careers in accounting. So I think we could expect to see more of that as well. So what other questions do we have? How to get access? Nasser asked how to get access on your platform. Does it need institutional partnership, or do you work with individual professors? And we work in both scenarios. In some instances, the institution and the various departments are interested in getting this technology implemented within academia. In other instances, individual professors are interested. So I encourage you to reach out to us for more information, and we can help you get started. Dr. Nix, you have another question from Joshua. Beyond your fintech degree, does your university envision developing other programs or curriculum, perhaps in non-business-like degree programs?
Okay, we are talking and brainstorming and thinking about ways to expose more students to blockchain, especially those in the liberal arts. So we have a program called BALA, which is Business and Liberal Arts, And I would very much like it if Bala could have a course that exposes the students to blockchain. These are students with liberal arts majors, but who also want to learn a little bit about the business. And some of them, as I found, some of the students may find they have a passion for it, really become obsessed with it. So I want to give them that opportunity. I think that there was another question about, why teach blockchain? And I have a very old-fashioned view of economics, which led me to blockchain, and that it's the study of institutions and technologies. And so it's so great to be at the sort of get a front seat to see how blockchain is transforming industries and to see the institutional structure, especially in terms of regulations, that are coming forward. And so to have the students too feel as though we're pioneers in understanding where this space is going to go.
I have another question that's not really directed towards you, Dr. Nix, but I
Sure.
would like you to share what your experience has been. Brad is asking, if we were interested, will we need to allocate budget for next year? Any idea how much we would be looking at in terms of implementing? And our SIMBA's short answer to that is that we've been working on an individual basis with universities because the concept is so new. And there may or may not be a budget in place, but I would like Dr. Nix to sort of share.
Yes, and I think that's a great question. As I said, I approached my chair and dean halfway through the semester wanting to use this. And SIMBA Chain was very flexible in giving us a very good price per student. And that's what we did. So the students who wanted to participate in this project, we paid for them. And it was very, very reasonable. It didn't break the bank. And, we were able to we had the funds already available. So we had enough money to cover it. I imagine other schools will have the students actually pay the tech fee that will be used for SIMBA Chain, but we didn't do that.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Nix. Trying to see if there are any other questions that we could quickly address before the end of time. No, I think we've addressed most of them.
Okay.
Has co-ownership, Jennifer asked the question, has co-ownership of digital course material been an issue with faculty IP? Not at this point. We're primarily embedding blockchain curriculum into their existing curriculum, or what SIMBA Chain is able to come in and offer independent workshops within the curriculum. So some schools have wanted maybe 2 to 3 sessions for us to cover the basics of blockchain and a quick start program. And others, the faculty member has been more interested in learning about the concept to be able to offer it themselves to their students. So we really haven't had any co-ownership issues at all when it comes to digital material.
But Lisa, if a student designed a really great smart contract and wanted to market it, how would that work? Maybe that's what they were referring to.
Well, Alex, would you want to take that one?
Yeah, I think the students, if they're, they can be complicated because, that kind of can break down to the universities and, all these different agreements. But as far as SIMBA is concerned, the contracts that they're, creating, like the smart contracts they're creating are the students' contracts, right? Yeah. So whatever they're doing with that and how they utilize that is theirs, right? Mm-hmm. And so now, how again that goes with the university's policies on what, because the university is paying for that and all those things, like that's going to be kind of individual, that'll have to kind of individually decided. But as far as SIMBA is concerned, when students are creating these contracts, those are the students, and they can use those however they can use them.
And the badges are a great idea. I know the students definitely want to work hard to get a badge. So that's also, something that I wanted to add. That was a really good motivator.
Dr. Nix, Joshua has an additional question for you.
Sure. Okay.
What kinds of professional development would qualify or could qualify a faculty member to teach a blockchain course? I am a dean and would like to invest in upskilling my faculty. Suggestions on where to start. Sending them back to grad school seems not to be a possibility, given the opportunity that exists here for schools to get on board in my market.
Well, first of all, I just love the question that the dean is so forward thinking and wants to basically improve the skill set of the current faculty. There are so many online programs to become familiar with blockchain, and I don't even know where to start, but there's one at Stanford. I know I took the one at Stanford. Professional education. Harvard has one. That's a little on the pricey side. So I haven't taken that, but my friend who works at the Fed, she took that, but the Fed paid for her to take that. And there's so much material from two very generous professors who teach at Princeton. They have made their textbook and their videos from the class available via YouTube, so that if you want a more technical background, that's wonderful. And overall, I have taught it twice, and I have changed I've had 5, 6 different books, and now I'm changing it again. So it's rapidly changing field in terms of how it's presented. But if you have an interested faculty member, myself, I had a sabbatical, so I had the time to really get into this in 2018. It's just really, really helpful to have one faculty member say, we can, let's get involved in this, because then others follow and say, well, what could I learn, or how can I learn it? Or I'd like a chance to teach something like that. So, and you also have the practitioner community, which we have also reached out to see if we can find adjuncts who would like to teach some of our classes. And we've been successful with that. So thank you for the question.
Well, there's a follow-up from Joshua as well. And he's asking, were these EDX-like things or micro-credentials?
These were micro-credentials. Stanford School of Professional Studies, I highly recommend. You do get a certificate. They sign off on that. I thought it was very good because it was taught by a computer science professor, half of it, and the other half by a lawyer. And I just found it fascinating. The Harvard, it's not the extension school. They have Get Smarter, that's what it's called. Harvard has partnered with the organization Get Smarter. They offer a really good fintech concentration. In addition, if you want to go to Coursera, Wharton has a program, but for a lot of, I could spend the whole day on it. I don't like it that much.
Very good. Thank you, Dr. Nix. And there's one final question regarding email contacts. We will be sure to include all of our contact information on the slide presentations you'll receive probably by sometime tomorrow. And that will provide all the contact information that you'll need to follow up with us. And could you send a link of those online educational courses? If we have those available, we'll include that in the material as well. With that, we will wrap things up. We're at the close of the hour now. Thank you so much for joining us today. And as I mentioned, please look for the complete deck that was shared with you this afternoon, and we appreciate your participation today.